Greetings, Rem PCs, and welcome to Insight Check, the show where we provide precious insight into your favorite and most beloved members of the Rem Alternis community. I'm your host, Derek Kingery, and once I made a beer float when I was 12, thinking the beer was a root beer. I'm here with John. Thank you for being here, John.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope that is a real thing, personally, because that sounds awful and amazing. It's like if you came across a Bartle and James wine cooler and was like, I'm going to make a root beer float out of this Bartle and James wine cooler. That'd be great.
It's like finding a wine cooler and being like, ooh, Kool-Aid. What would you say are your baking specialties as someone who is really into baking?
I like brownies. A good brownie is very versatile. It's good with ice cream, good by itself. I haven't mastered. I've been working really diligently on kind of that Swiss cake roll cake, where it's a really big Swiss cake roll, which I really enjoy. Peach cobbler, I'm coming up on my peach cobbler, strawberry shortcake, summer fruit kind of season thing, and of course you have pumpkin pies in November and October. So yeah. When
you find yourself watching shows like The Great British Bake Off, do you find yourself kind of yelling advice and critiques at the screen?
I only do that after I've attempted to make the thing. I actually
That's very principled.
Yeah, well, it's also because it's my chill show, and I've seen it a whole bunch of times. Except for the episode where they wrapped a lemon in pastry and steamed it, which I have no desire to do because they just steamed the whole lemon wrapped in pastry. I can't fathom it. And rainbow bagels just aren't a thing I'll make. But I did a Thanksgiving where all of my side dishes and desserts were Great British Bake Off. I went through the seasons we had.
That's fantastic.
And I made a list and I made things. I made popovers, which were a lot of fun. They call them Yorkshire puddings, but they're just popovers. And it was a lot of fun. It is really tough. Doing things with the time limit is tough when I'm in my kitchen. If you give me time limit, everything's gonna.
Yes. I have so much anxiety on behalf of the contestants.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And it's fine. I mean, because I can bake it however long it takes at home. And the one downside of the Great British Bake Off and emulating that is the amount of dishes that they use that you don't really see until you're actively making the thing and you have no bowls left. Because someone's got to clean all that after, which is kind of the downside of things.
Well, I'm excited for Cruella to come out. I don't know how you're feeling about it, Cruella is coming out, and I'm definitely going to watch it. I have a lot of feelings about the live action movies, but I'll give them all a shot.
Disney has... I think people think of Disney just as an animated company. I think people forget Disney has a lot of live action. For a long time, it was a staple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, specifically the live action based on the cartoons.
And see, I saw... Did
you see the live action...
I saw the live action 101 Dalmatians with Hugh Laurie and Glenn Close and Jeff Daniels. And I think
the guy that plays Arthur Weasley is also in it, right? Oh, so good.
Yeah, and I think the villain in Cruella played Anita in 101 Dalmatians live action. Here's my showing my age. I'm showing my age is that 101 Dalmatians, I was old enough to buy a kid's meal that had the merchandise from that 101 Dalmatians in it. I had 101 Dalmatians snow globe when I was a kid. So
I was legitimately terrified of Glenn Close for years because of her playing Cruella.
I mean, she skins puppies, she boils rabbits and things. Glenn Close just really goes hard.
She did so well. The other person that I'm actually still to this day legitimately kind of terrified of is Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't know that I can point to a particular movie in which she was actually someone terrifying, but she's so good. There's something about her that is just
She was just fabulous in Grease 2. I mean, for all those Grease 2 fans out there, hi, how you doing? She just wanted a cool writer.
The like newer Hairspray.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where she was Miss Baltimore Crabs.
I think what's fun about Hairspray is that you can actually look at the introduction of Hairspray as almost a look at how queerness has changed too, which is kind of a great way to circle back.
Ooh, say more about that.
Yeah. So the original Hairspray, which is kind of has this 1950s vibe, was shot by John Waters with Divine, and John Waters, who lives in Baltimore. He's a Baltimore native, I believe. I could be wrong about that. John Waters fan, please don't hate me if I get this wrong. But he did a lot of dark, underground, angsty, queer stuff. Like the idea of, have you ever seen the gif of the woman in the red pink dress going, "Kill everyone now"? That is from, I think it's from Female Trouble. It might be from something else, but it's one of the John Waters movies. And John Waters was a very reactionary filmmaker. It was very underground, very queer, very indie. Did not have a big audience. It wasn't something that people loved unless you were part of the scene. And this predates Rocky Horror by however many years. And so you look at 60s Hairspray with that kind of message. There's a lot of queerness, a lot of defiance to it. It's not a musical. It's, they have rats actually scurrying over people's feet. The line from Hairspray, the musical, "The rats on the street all dance for my feet," came from the first Hairspray movie with Ricky Lake playing it, where they actually have like it's a lovers scene and they have rats going across her feet. Like that's part to show how, how they're finding love in this place. So you look at that, and then you come to Hairspray the musical, which is really kind of glamorous and it's poppy, very colorful. And its message isn't necessarily different. It's still about acceptance, but there's a brightness to it that you don't get in kind of that indie underground gritty scene.
Yeah.
It's exploring Baltimore the same way. And so you can look at the two Hairsprays, and you can even look at the stage version of Hairspray almost as a different entity, because it's not so dependent on the location of the sets, but it still has that same kind of message.
John, I know that you are a playwright, and I want to hear a little bit how narrative storytelling, how theater has kind of shaped your life, and what were the things that got you into playwriting to begin with?
Sure. I will start by saying I am late in life theater. I did a little bit when I was a kid in like church plays and things like that. I got to point at Jesus as he was like getting crucified and all that jazz. Never got to be Jesus, but point. Yeah, and then I kind of let theater go for a while. I was going to go for like the sensible classes and do like math and science and English, and wasn't going to do art because I'd never seen anyone do art as a career. I knew people did it, but those were not people that I knew personally, so I was like, that's not going to be a thing. So I resisted, and then I started writing fan fiction for Buffy, and it was all downhill from there. And yeah, I had a couple major life events happen where I just found myself incredibly unhappy and withdrawn. And I started thinking about kind of all the stories I was seeing were all very straight. They were all for, straight people. They were, even the Golden Girls only had cameo gay characters kind of thing. I think for me, I just got really tired of not seeing myself anywhere, or only seeing myself as a special interest character in a sitcom or someone to be laughed at on a sketch show. And there's kind of power in finding a voice and putting something out there. Being able to take time to really learn your voice, to really work on presenting what you want in the world. I started 5-6 years ago calling myself the person I was going to write new queer fairy tales. So I would take like Cinderella and I would give it a queer twist, which I did. And if there's any composers that want to composed some music for a really cool Cinderella musical, Call Me. Um, yeah, but so I started out this idea that I was going to be the new Stephen Sondheim, and I was going to write queer musicals, and that was great as a place to start. But then as I started discovering who I was, I realized that, there's so much more to my voice. When I say I want anyone to be able to come to a show and see it and experience theater, I mean it. When I say I want someone to be able to come to my table for a table read and experience theater, I mean theater is open to all. It's one of those things where a lot of what I do in like Clockwork as Panabon has that storytelling element to it. The gender queerness is not by accident. I don't glitter my eyebrows anymore because you can't see it with my lighting. But a lot of Panabon is intentional in telling stories. The direction of creation of Panabon was intentional in making kind of this veiled dancer subclass and going through wanting to do kind of almost a more artistic, violent thief rogue character. Because you don't see a lot of that. I call Panabon like the genderqueer Catwoman because I don't really have another reference for it. That's kind of the vibe.
That's great.
Yes. So, yeah, theater.
Yes.
It's for everyone. Try theater. It's great. You'll love it.
So how did you get involved with like Clockwork and with like role-playing games and things like that?
So like theater, I had resisted D&D for a long time. Because the thing was, it's kind of for nerds. Like, it was always that too. Like, it was never just like, oh yeah, those are the nerdy people. It was like, nerds, you don't want to be them.
Yeah.
So I resisted it for a long time, and I just didn't really know anyone playing. I went to high school in Vegas, and there was just no one I knew. Like, there were people that did Magic the Gathering.
Love it.
We didn't have anybody doing D&D in my high school. So it was one of the things where I only had a concept of it as being the thing you did in a wood panel basement with like 4 other people, and
yeah.
So
you hissed at the sunlight, all of that.
I hissed at the sunlight. I always hiss at the sunlight because I burn very easily. But that's me personally. Yeah, but I started playing D&D. I liked it. I liked being able to create a character and live in a world because a lot of what I did in fan fiction was a part of that. A lot of what I do in building theater is a part of that. The hardest part about it for me is probably improv and doing the yes and in the moment, because improv is not something that is natural to all theater people.
Yeah.
I'm one of the theater people that when someone says we're going to play a theater game, I like shut down on myself and I'm like, I'm not playing a theater game.
You're like, tell me my lines.
Just tell me my lines. Here are your lines. I'm going to direct you, but I'm not going to the theater like a chicken with its head cut off. That's not something I do. That's a deep theater cut for any theater kids listening in the audience. Yeah, but it's one of those things where I resisted D&D for a long time, and then I started playing Shadowrun because I liked the idea more. It seemed more accessible than going into kind of a Tolkien, Tamora Pierce kind of past fantasy. I like the idea of being present in the future, and even though the world sucks in the Shadowrun universe, I found it more accessible because I got dystopia more than I got utopia of kind of like the forever past.
Yeah.
And that was where I met Danny. He was one of the first GMs to make me feel okay about not being good at math. He was very patient with me. And
Danny's pretty all right.
Danny is pretty all right. Don't ask him how much he likes Darude Sandstorm, because I feel like every time I bring up Darude, there's a little bit of a block there, so maybe don't bring up Darude.
Okay, noted.
But Danny was really cool with it, and he understood that I was telling a story more than I was just playing a character and rolling dice. So it was really fun. I've gotten the chance to work with him. Not just on like Clockwork, but a couple of Sailors on the Starless Sea. If anybody watched that during the streamathon that we did, shout out to the streamathon and to Sarah. Hi, Sarah. It's a lot of fun with Danny because you don't know where you're going necessarily, but you know you're having a good time getting there.
Yes.
And the rest of the cast is great. I feel very supported. They understand I'm a theater person and I'm a little odd, and they're all a little odd in their own way, and we have a good time. I have a good time. Sometimes Panabon just says and does things that don't make sense, but I have a good time even if I don't quite know where Panabon's going.
So I hear that you love comics. Is that true?
I love comics, but comics are expensive, so I love comics, but a lot of times they're from far away. I do follow some of my favorite creators on Twitter, but comics kind of become one of those things where if that's what you spend your money on, that's what you spend your money on.
Right.
I did spend a whole bunch of money on Funko Pops, but they're not really comics so much. So, but yes, I love comics.
Do you have specific, fandoms of comics that you like?
My favorite one, and everyone I know is going to go, oh, God. Boom Studios, who have basically rebooted the Power Rangers in a very powerful way. I did not expect it. It kind of came out of nowhere. The Lord Drakon Shattered Grid kind of revamping of the entire Power Rangers universe has been really powerful to watch. And not just because my favorites are involved, but also because of how they reboot kind of the universe and the thoughtfulness of it. Whenever I think about comics, I think about kind of the thoughtfulness of what does it mean to do this.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with the comic where somebody just punches a person in the face or shoots laser beams at them. That's great too. There's a place for that, but there's something really special about Shattered Grid. And there's something really special about the Power Ranger fandom. It's been going for a long time, even longer if you're a Sentai fan, which there are some Sentai that I love that I wish they would bring across to America, but it's probably not happening. But yeah, Shattered Grid. I'm sorry, I'm looking, if I turn my head, I'm looking at my shelf of comic books. I got the Dark Knight series, which was Dark Knight's Metal and things like that. I think the series is called DC Metal or something. And it's basically a revamp of the Batman universe. And it's great because I got really tired of gritty Batman after a while. So it's really great to see Batman's kind of weird, arcane, almost playful side come back. So I'm big on that. I like Sailor Moon too, but once again, expensive. So I just have like the Funko Pops and I dream about the manga. If anybody from Sailor Moon Corporation wants to send me Sailor Moon stuff, I'm not going to say no. I'm just saying.
You mentioned that you like serving in your community. When your community is open, what are some of your kind of frequent places of service?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm going to be hosting in a couple of weeks. I have a fundraiser coming up for the People's Pantry, which is run out of the local queer center here. And this pantry serves undernourished people in the community that are specifically queer, so that's a big deal to me. Queer spaces are really important to me. And so ideally, the ideal thing is to be able to lift up spaces where people can just be like, the ability to do theater is kind of dependent upon spaces where people can interact with theater. So it's partially selfish, but it's also about, just having places where people can meet other queer people. So like my whole thing about my community is lifting up spaces where people can just go and be.
John, it's been great having you. This has been a pleasure getting to know you. And it's time for our final question. So our final question on Insight Check is always, on your real life character sheet, what is your class, specialty, and weakness?
I'm going to say for class, Druid, which is probably surprising, but it's true, a Druid.
Not a bard?
A bard. I know, people are like, you're a playwright, so you're a bard. I'm like, well, I mean, if I was a rock star, I could be a bard. It's not really my thing.
Bards are storytellers.
But there's some stuff about Druid in nature and with animals that I really resonate with. If you've ever taken me to the zoo, you know that I'm a Druid, okay? I mean, it's kind of sad because everyone's behind bars, but like, they opened up a thing at my local zoo where you could like watch the elephants like shower inside, and especially during zoo lights where it's nice and warm. It's just like the best thing ever. So, Druid.
Amazing.
Druid. And then my specialty is creativity in all of its greatness. And
of course,
my weakness is that I keep my heart on my sleeve and I keep it real.
Awesome. On a 16 insight check, you find out that I, in fact, did not make a beer float thinking that beer was root beer. However, my husband did.
Oh, it's so good though. It's
Yes,
so good. It sounds like something that could happen.
When he was 12, he accidentally made a beer float thinking the beer was root beer, and promptly threw up. And then, like 9 years later, I married him.
Did you have root beer floats at the wedding?
We did not. No. Well, we came, we saw, we insight checked. That's all for this episode, and we want to give a special thank you to our guest, John. Thanks for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I had a good time. Thank you for letting me talk forever.
It's been amazing. We also want to thank you, our REM PCs, for tuning in. Make sure that you join the Patreon for exclusive content and opportunities, and there are links and info in the video description below. Bye.
Bye. There may or may not be a fan dance like me in the Star Trek movie that Uhura does. May or may not be a fan dance on the Patreon. You just never know.